Hey guys, so this video is on gear in King's Raid. So gear in King's Raid is pretty much the thing that makes your heroes the most powerful. There are three things in King's Raid that will make your heroes more powerful. Their level, gear, and their transcendence level. Gear is the one that gives them the most power of the three. Level is amazing. A level 80 hero has much better stats than a level 70 hero, so don't just leave your heroes around 70. For example, you look at my Theo's stats over here, you can see a base attack of 15,000, 5,000 physical, and 6,000 magical defense. Versus if we go up here to Raw, almost 20,000 attack, 6,000 physical defense, and 5,500 magic defense. And Raw's only a assassin, which means his base stats are a bit lower than a warrior's. So make sure you get your heroes to 80. Level also carries with it a level suppression feature. So if your hero's level is lower, they will deal less damage to certain monsters than a hero with a higher level. So don't just ignore your heroes, get them to 71 and think, okay, they can wear tier 7 gear. That's good. Make sure to get them to 80. But gear is the thing that makes your heroes it gives them the most power of anything in the game. So there are 6 pieces of gear. You've got your weapon, your main armor, your sub-armor, your accessory, your orb, and your artifact. Of the 6, the artifact is the most unique in that, unlike the other 5, artifacts don't necessarily carry a static base stat bonus. This one does. It's an exception. It gives a flat 100 crit chance and 20% crit damage the entire battle. But other artifacts, such as the Soulspring Water, have fairly unique effects, such as at the beginning of each battle, recover 24% of your hit points and 12% of your mana, and that's at the beginning of each round. So round 1, round 2, round 3, this will activate each time. Other really interesting artifacts include stuff like the Burning Brazier of Elf, which gives you 10% chance to recover one entire piece of point of mana. So artifacts are pretty unique. The other 5 are all pretty much stat sticks. They provide a flat bonus, so attack for your weapon, physical defense for your armor, magical defense for your sub-armor, flat HP for the orb, and then the accessory, there are 4 different types. There's flat attack for earrings, magical defense for necklaces, there's physical defense for bracelets. Do I have a bracelet? Yes, I do. There's flat HP for rings, and like I said, attack for earrings. So the accessory is kind of a piece that can reinforce whatever your hero's main role is. If you want them to do more damage, you use earrings. If you want them to tank better, use a ring. If you want them to tank better specifically against magical or physical damage, use a necklace or a bracelet. The other 4, the weapon is probably the easiest one to choose, because for pretty much every hero with 1 or 2 small, pretty much little asterisks next to them that say can do better with a non-unique weapon, every other hero wants a unique weapon, and some of them really want their unique weapon. Theo, for example, does amazingly with his unique weapon, and even better once you get it some stars. Like my Mirian's got a 1-star unique weapon here. Raw is the same. Raw definitely wants his unique weapon. Frey wants her unique weapon because it lets her actually be a healer rather than just a shielder. And it's pretty easy. You just, for most heroes, just if you can get their unique weapon, grab their unique weapon, slap it on them. Now, some heroes, there is a caveat to that. Some heroes will do better with their unique weapon, but really want extra stars on their unique weapon, like my Mirian has. And not just 1, they want 2, 3, maybe even 4 for them to really bring out their full potential. Theo and Raw are 2 of the best examples of this, because both of them have unique weapons that give them stat bonuses when upgraded. And that's the thing about unique weapons. Unique weapons, usually when you upgrade an item, all that upgrades is the flat main stat. So if I look at my Raw, for example, up here, I have a 4-star Swift Darkness Leather Cape with a max magical defense of 7,730. An unupgraded one with 0 stars only has a maximum of 4,547. And if I get this to 5 stars, it will be exactly double this. It will be 9,094 magical defense. So most items, when you upgrade them, only upgrade this stat. The substats that they have, the 4 options below, are only affected by the tier. A tier 7 gear can have a maximum plus 11%. So let's go over here. Plus 11% for most of them, or double that for stuff such as crit damage. However, unique weapons are a little different in that when you upgrade them, it's not just the attack that goes up, it's also the unique option. So for Mirianne, a 0-star version of her Endless Acceleration Riventina will have, while auto-attacking, there is a 10% chance to increase attack speed by 200 for 5 seconds while attacking the enemy with the lowest defense, dealing 100% of attack as extra magic damage. The 5 seconds does not change, but everything else upgrades by 2% per upgrade, which means if I could get her a 5-star version of this, she'd have a 20% chance to increase attack speed by 400 while dealing 200% of attack as extra magic damage, which would make her much more powerful, not to mention the fact that the attack would double compared to the 0-star version, which has about 37,000 attack. So upgrading the unique weapon for heroes such as Theo, whose unique weapon gives him a ton of various stats, attack speed, crit damage, and penetration, makes him much more powerful, which means he is not only unique weapon reliant, he is unique weapon reliant, and he wants stars on that unique weapon. Now, what makes the rest of the gear, and what most of you probably came to this video for, is the options on the gear. Each piece of gear will have substats, also commonly referred to as options on it. A common piece of gear will have 1, a rare piece will have 2, a heroic or ancient piece of gear will have 3, so 3 substats, and a legendary piece of gear from the Dragon Raids will have 4 substats. So before I go over substats, I'll quickly cover Dragon Raids. So choosing your set is pretty important. You have 2 types of sets. You've got ancient sets, which come from farming the hard mode or the hell mode of most stages, and you have dragon sets, which come from farming the dragon raids. If you just go over here, you have the dragon raids, and there are 4 dragons. Mostly you can ignore ancient sets because ancient sets aren't really worth it to farm due to how easy it is to find a guild or find some people willing to carry you through dragon raids. I would not farm dragon gear until level 60, and honestly I would just wait for 70 because getting to 71 is much easier now that they've revamped the experience curve. But finding a guildie to carry you through level 70 Fire Dragon or Black Dragon or even Poison or Frost Dragon if you absolutely need any piece of gear possible, just because legendary gear is so much more powerful in terms of base stats, is a good idea to make your heroes much more powerful. Now the set effects that they have are Fire Dragon gives you extra crit chance, Frost Dragon gives you more maximum HP, Poison Dragon gives you crit resistance, which is good in PvP, and the Black Dragon gives you mana per attack. So when you attack, you gain mana. This always happens every attack. However, it's not very much, and you can increase that mana by putting a mana recovery per attack rune in your weapon, and by using the Black Dragon set. So a lot of heroes, because skills are so powerful in this game, Black Dragon is the recommended set for pretty much every hero. However, Ice Dragon is the recommended set for a lot of tanks. Fire Dragon is not a bad set either. It's a lot easier to farm Fire Dragon on your own than it is to farm Black Dragon. Fire Dragon's an easier dragon to farm, and crit is usable on a lot of heroes. Theo, for example, really likes crit chance, so I've got a 2-2 split of the Fire set and the Black Dragon set. So for the most part, it's pretty easy. Just go Black Dragon. Skills and mana are so important in this game that having Black Dragon on a hero, you cannot go wrong having Black Dragon. But some heroes, it's not bad to go Fire Dragon. It's not wrong to go Poison Dragon if you want PvP, or if that's the only thing you can get, because a lot of people farm Poison Dragon to farm points to get Gladdy. So if they're willing to let you into the room, just take it and get the gear anyways. For example, my Klaus is using a bunch of Poison Dragon pieces, because I've got some decent tank stuff. And Ice Dragon is good for tanks. So substats are really what make a hero powerful. You've got your main stats. So if I go to Mirianne here, She's got pretty good main stats from her weapon. Her earrings give her a ton of attack as well. And then she's using the tier 6 perfect gear that we got from the raid set. And the reason I'm using tier 6 perfect gear is because I don't really care about her max HP, her physical defense, or her magical defense, as she is a ranged assassin. She doesn't get hit very much. She has a huge shield from her second skill, and the substats that they give make her much more powerful, because increasing her attack by 40%, her attack speed by 40%, her crit by 40%, and her crit damage by 80% is absolutely phenomenal in terms of increasing her overall power. And substats are kind of tricky. So realistically, the substats you want for a DPS are attack, attack speed, crit, and crit damage. For a tank, it varies from tank to tank, as some tanks want, for example, Klaus really wants physical block due to how his second skill and fourth skill work. Every tank does want block. Klaus really wants it though. So the priority is a bit different, but for the most part, tanks want max HP, physical defense, magical defense, and block. And then healers want the same as DPS, because a healer's heal is determined by the amount of attack they have. So the more attack they have, the more their heal will heal your team for. And healers also want crit, because heals that are not percent based can crit. If my Frey does a 10,000 damage heal and she crits, it'll do 20,000 damage if she has 100% crit damage. So having for your healers, you really want pretty much DPS sets: attack, attack speed, crit, crit damage. And attack speed is important for all classes, because attack speed determines how much mana you get. Because of how the Black Dragon set works, how the mana recovery rune works, and how mana recovery in general works in the game, having more attack speed means you will gain more mana, which means you can cast more skills. And for healers, because their skills are important for keeping your team alive as well as for buffing them, having more mana is never a bad thing. It's never a bad thing for any class, but healers especially. So you definitely want attack speed on most of your healers' gear, and you definitely want at least one mana recovery rune. For DPS, just attack, attack speed, crit, crit damage will never steer you wrong. Some of them might want a specific substat, for example, penetration, accuracy, or lifesteal. And for most DPS, you should have at least one line of lifesteal. For example, I've got mine on the earrings, just because having a line of lifesteal will reduce the burden on the healer. If your DPS gets caught up in some AoE or someone dives them in the back line, that way your DPS can recover their health and lessen the burden on your healer, allowing them to cast shields or buffs instead of having to heal your DPS. Accuracy is pretty important, but you don't need it as a subset on your gear. You can just aim for it on enchantments, or maybe if you have to, you can use a rune for it. I didn't have an ancient crit damage rune, so I'm using an accuracy rune for now on my Mirian's armor, but I will switch that to an ancient crit damage rune once I get it. So accuracy isn't bad, but you don't care about it too much. Penetration is really good to have. If I go to my Annette here, I want to say, penetration is probably the best substat to have after the main 4 for a DPS. So it would go attack, crit, attack speed are all pretty up there, with attack probably being the most important, followed by attack speed or crit, depending on the hero, followed by crit damage. But penetration can edge out crit damage in some cases, and penetration is pretty good to have. So if you get penetration, don't be too sad. It's a pretty good substat to roll on your gear. So obviously, when you're getting your gear, it's random. When you're farming the dragons, when you're farming for various items, you have no control over the substats you get. And ideally, your holy grails are your perfect substat gear. For example, the stuff that I gave to my Mirian. But for the most part, that's pretty difficult to get, because there's a lot of substats. Attack, attack speed, crit, crit damage, lifesteal, penetration, accuracy, physical dodge, physical block, magical defense, max HP. There are a ton of substats. So rolling the perfect 4 is very difficult. When you're just starting out, I would recommend rolling for 2 perfect substats. Now, that means you do ideally want the best substats for your hero. For my Miriam, I'd want attack speed and attack, or attack and crit, or attack speed crit. Crit damage, I place a smaller importance on, just because crit damage is useless without crit, and both of them are less useful if you don't have the attack to back it up. So go for attack, attack speed, and crit. 2 out of those 3 would be ideal. And look for, if you can, try to get ones with stuff such as accuracy or penetration as other substats. You don't need to have them, but it's better to have accuracy, penetration, or lifesteal than to have physical dodge, max HP, or magical defense, for example, as those will increase your DPS's damage rather than just increasing their survivability by a bit. For a tank, obviously, you're looking for the opposite. You're looking for the max HP, magical defense, or physical defense, 2 out of those 3, as well as physical block. Just use your own best judgment. But look for 2 perfect substats starting out. I would not use less than 2 perfect substats, as you can just roll, for example, Ancient or Heroic gear really easily that has 3 perfect substats. This one is not a good example because it's max HP. But this one, for example, is magic defense, physical defense, and physical block, which I used for a while back when my Klaus was only in his level 60 stage. So I wouldn't use less than 2 perfect substats for legendary gear, but when you get 2 perfect substats starting out, that's fine. Use it. Legendary gear is much more powerful than ancient gear. For example, this plus 15 heroic orb is only a little better already upgraded than the totally unupgraded legendary orb. And the legendary orb will max out, even if it's T7 to T6, will max out at almost double the total for the T6 orb. Do I have any upgraded T6? Here we go. T7 3-star orb is only 10,000 HP better than a 0-star legendary version of the same orb. And it doesn't have the set effect. Yes, you could find an ancient version, but finding ancient versions requires you to farm them. And if you can farm, try to just farm for legendary sets instead, as they have the extra substat and much higher base stats, as the base stats of an ancient are pretty similar, maybe a tiny bit better than a heroic of the same tier. So going for legendary, try to go for 2 perfect substats. And look, if you can find 3 perfect substats, that's pretty much what you'll be using on your heroes for the most part. Once you start to get better stuff, you will start getting 3 perfect subset items, and those are what you're going to mostly use. Are there these 3 perfect subsets? This one's pretty close with crit penetration and crit damage. Unfortunately, it's not attack or attack speed, but it's not bad. This is something I would have used before I found some better stuff, such as this one with attack, crit, attack speed, and then accuracy, which isn't perfect, but is a nice roll to have anyways. And getting 3 perfect substats to replace those 2 perfect substats, once you find 3 perfect substat gear, you can start reforging to look for perfect gear. So ideally you just find perfect gear, but because that's so rare, we can reforge items. Now reforging items is tricky because it costs rubies, and the cost goes up. So you only want to reforge twice, 100 and then 200 rubies. After that, it keeps doubling, 400 and then 800 and so on rubies. But the forge is where we improve all our equipment. You can awaken your gear here by using 2 pieces of the same gear. So obviously getting to 5 stars is pretty difficult. Even a 1-star only has a 10% success rate. But luckily, once you do so, your failure bonus goes up and doesn't go away until you finally succeed. So is this any good? Yeah. They're both pretty awful. So let's try this, for example. Only a 10% chance, so it's probably not going to succeed. I'll be pretty happy if it does, but yeah, there we go, fail. Luckily, you don't lose anything, and you get a 3% failure bonus for using that 1-star to fail. It also costs a lot of money to awaken tier 7 gear, so not exactly the easiest thing to do. And there are strategies for awakening. Awakening gear, what you want to do is, from 0 to 3 stars, only use 0-star gear. So for example, if I was upgrading this gun, for example, I would use a 0-star, because it's 0 star, so 100% chance, Then when I'm upgrading to a 2-star, I would just use 0-star as well for a 50% chance, and then this would go up by 16% if I fail for a 66% chance for the second one. Same with going to 3-star. If you have any, do I have any 2-star gear here? Let's actually just upgrade something for you guys. Where's Theo? So we'll just throw this this chest on. You can see it's got 2 good substats and a 1 okay one, but I've got better stuff like the one I'm upgrading right now. So from 0-star to 1-star, you're always going to succeed. It's literally impossible to fail unless you somehow get a bug. From 1-star to 2-star, you want to use 0-star again. A lot of people for 0-star to, for 1-star to 2-star, will just combine a pair of 0-star chests to make a 1-star chest, just because it doesn't really cost you much extra. Like, this cost me 2 chests anyways, so it would have cost the same. And from 2-star to 3-star, once again, you use 0-star. So I just throw it in, hope for the best. Hey, look, 25% chance. Success. 3-star to 4-star. So I'm not sure if I even have any 3-star stuff that I'm trying to upgrade right now. Yeah, all the 3-star stuff I have is kind of already upgraded. So 3-star to 4-star. I guess I've got this actually. It's not a bad orb. 3-star to 4-star, what you want to do is you start off by using a 1-star to give yourself that 3% failure bonus, and then you use 0-stars the rest away. And then 4-star to 5-star, I want to say you use a 3-star first, and then use 1-stars for the rest of it. So yeah, failure. And Awakening gear is going to cost you a lot of money, but because from 0-stars to 5-stars, you literally double the total stats, it's totally worth it to do. You want to 5-star all your gear, and you want to use tier 7 gear for all of it. Option Enhancement, you can't fail. It's... No, you just can't fail. All it is that a good one? Yeah, it's pretty good. What about this one? So Option Enhancement, you pay a ton of money, and you gain 0.5% or plus 5. So crit, attack speed, and you just gain the options, and you spend tons of money, as well as magic powder. That's what magic powder is used for. And finally, you've got Reforge equipment and enchants. So enchant is what you use to upgrade your gear randomly. Enchants are the most RNG upgrade because you have no control over it, and you've just got to kind of pray to RNGesus that it'll work. So is this good? Yeah, it's a good chest. So each enchant, you get rare and heroic and ancient dragon enchant scrolls, and each one has different stuff on it. For example, Flame has crit, lifesteal. Poison has attack. But that's pretty much the only good attack thing from Poison. Dark has attack speed. Let's just try out a fire enchantment on this. Now, luckily, it doesn't cost too much gold. And that's pretty good. I got lifesteal on it. I am happy with lifesteal enchantment. And really, you're just kind of trying to spam enchantments to get something good. Finally, we've got Reforge equipment. So reforging equipment, like I said, you can only choose one option. So that's the big caveat to reforging equipment. So for example, I already reforged that, yes. Do I have anything worth reforging? I think I do. Not that one. Where's Theo? So once you've already, so these ones I've already done for both of them. once you've changed an option, you can no longer try again. Lifesteal is what I've rolled on this one. I cannot try to change attack speed, crit, or attack. So let's try to change the max HP on this orb. And when you do it, it does not mean that it has to be changed. So you've got Reforge coupons, Reforge tickets, but if you have these, don't use them until you've at least used the first 2 rubies. Just because you don't want to... You use rubies for this just because that's how it has to be. Max HP to CC resist, so you can choose to keep the old stat. Let's try it one more time. Once again, I won't do it. And we'll use rubies. All right, come on, give me something good. Oh my god, freaking perfect. Give me attack. All right, that's absolutely amazing right there. We are very, very happy with that. So now I can no longer change any other options in this. I can still go back and try to change this option. I'm not going to, but I could. And you really want to enhance the Reforge tickets on a piece of gear that's already perfect, except for that one stat. So for this one, it's perfect, crit damage, attack speed. The only way to make this better is if I could reroll attack onto it. And I've already tried rerolling it twice, and it hasn't gone, so I'm not using any Reforge tickets on it yet. I'm not doing anything else. This one rolled Lifesteal, which I'm also pretty happy with, so once again, I'm not changing it. So really, reforging, you only want to reforge things that already have 3 perfect substats, as you're going for 4 perfect substats, or 2 perfect substats and 1 pretty much almost perfect substat. Like I want to say the orb, yeah, it was crit damage, crit, and penetration. Obviously, ideally, it'd be crit damage, crit, and attack speed, but penetration's pretty good. And now that I've rolled attack on it, this orb is way better than before. As max HP, it's good for increasing survivability, but in terms of an offensive orb, I'd much prefer attack or attack speed, which we've got, so woohoo. So realistically for gear, at a low level, just kind of use what you can. You don't need to have amazing gear to get through the first stages of the story. The first time you ever really need to stop and farm gear, I would say, is probably about Chapter 4. And that's not even farming gear, you just kind of want to farm... So I go over to Chapter 4 for a second. Let's go to the Conquest. You're not even stopping to farm gear, really. You're stopping to farm to gain some levels, because if you blitz through, you're probably going to be a little under-leveled. So what I did was I just farmed 4-1, which gives you knight gear to equip your tank a bit better. And it also gives you warrior gear. So if you're using Theo, 4-1 is an absolutely amazing stage to farm. And then just use whatever heroic gear that has one or maybe 2 okay subsets on it. Don't bother farming for perfect gear here. Just farm for 1 or 2 for some heroic gear, get it to plus 15, and then use that to murder through the stage, especially once you get up to Jane, I want to say on 414, and Malduke on 421. You're probably going to spend quite a bit of time farming, at least like a day, maybe 2, Chapter 5 for gear. And Chapter 5, once again, just farm 5-1. Then for upgrading your DPS, find whichever drops the weapon for your DPS. So for example, over here, you've got the warrior and mechanic weapon. 592, you've got the... that's the gear, sub-gear, and main gear for mechanic, archer, and assassin. Over here you've got assassin. Over here you've got archer. Where is mechanic? Where's wizard here? Here it is. And wizard's over in 511. Chapter 6 is where you're going to spend a ton of time as a new player. Chapter 6, especially if you're using a physical team, like honestly, one of the things I regret the most in this game, starting out, is the fact that I used Raw as my main DPS and I built a physical team to go through the story. Chapter 6 was a freaking nightmare using Raw. Yes, I had Maria and Klaus and Frey, which made my team super safe, but my damage was so low that getting past Chapter 6 took me like a good week. Maybe even more than that, maybe like a week and a half. And for Chapter 6, 6-2 is a really safe place to farm because it's really just a DPS check. There's no one that attacks your backline because the little worms over here on 6-3. 6-3? It must be like 6-4 or something. Or maybe 6-1, yeah. So these worms right here, they attack your backline in Chapter 6. So you've got to be careful with these. But for Chapter 6, this is when you want to start actually farming for decent gear. You don't need to farm for perfect gear or anything. But farming for some okay gear to outfit your units, especially once they're 61, because they have to use Tier 5 gear until 61. But farming them a good set of Tier 6 gear will make a world of difference. And another way to get gear, so before you can do dragon raids, one of the easiest ways to get gear is a little thing, I'll be doing a video on this later, it's called the summon trick. Essentially, once you hit Chapter 6 or Chapter 7, ideally Chapter 7 because then you get equipment. So how the special shop works, I'll explain this quickly, is when you summon items from 2 different tiers. And these tiers are the most recent chapter you've done at least the first part of, and so at least the very first mission of. So as soon as you do 6-1 easy, the special shop will start spitting out Tier 6 gear as well as Tier 5 gear. So as soon as you beat Chapter 7 Part 1, you will start getting Tier 7 and Tier 6 gear from this. Once you beat Chapter 6 Part 1, it's Tier 6 and Tier 5 gear. Now, a lot of people recommend waiting until Chapter 7 to really do this trick, because really doing this trick will make you a lot of money and will pretty much fully outfit your team in good heroic and ancient gear. But you can do this trick early on. You don't need to do it the full way to get yourself some pretty good Tier 6 gear early on when you can't farm for heroic and ancient Tier 6 stuff because it's too difficult. And all you do is you literally just go to the shop, it's easy, and you do 10 times summons. And at a certain point, because of an achievement up here, the gold spending achievement, money comes and goes, as well as the come on try your luck achievement. So this is the real one, the come on try your luck achievement. Gives you tons of gold for summoning items. And the more you summon, the more gold it gives you, and eventually you start earning more gold than you're spending just from doing the item summon trick. And this lasts for a while until you finally dry it up and all of a sudden you start losing gold again because you've used up all the achievements. So personally, what I recommend doing is once you get Chapter 6, do that to get your team a bunch of heroic and ancient gear. It doesn't need to be perfect stats, like don't bother doing it so much that you have perfect stats for all your team. But get an okay chest plate for your tank, get a good weapon for your main DPS if they don't have their unique weapon, get good accessories, because accessories are the hardest things to farm early on. Get good accessories from that trick, the summons for sure. And then you can do that again once your team can do Chapter 7 Part 1 and is level 71 to get better gear. Of course, by the time you're level 71, hopefully you've joined a guild that can run you through the raids, and that way you can get legendary gear. But if you can't, getting some perfect heroic gear is perfectly fine to start clearing Chapter 7 easy, as well for clearing Hell Mode in Chapter 1. Now, I would not recommend awakening or option enhancing gear until you're using at least Tier 6, if not Tier 7 gear, and definitely not unless you're using legendary gear. You can, I stress can because it's really pointless unless you've got perfect gear like the Tier 6 gear ticket stuff. You can turn Tier 6 gear into Tier 7 gear, legendary and ancient gear. To do this, you need certain items, and I'm sure anyone that's farmed up to this point has seen them. They are the crystal fragments and the scales. What these do is, with 10 of these scales, you can upgrade Tier 6 equipment of that type, so Tier 6 Black Dragon for Dark Scales, Tier 6 Fire Dragon for Fire Scales, and Ancient Gear for the crystal fragments. You can upgrade it to Tier 7. The caveat behind that is that it needs to be 5-starred. And 5-star gear is pretty expensive. So if you're going to do that, make sure it's a perfect stat gear, like the stuff that we got from the tickets from the Kings and Raid stuff. So realistically, yeah. For the first few story missions, you don't need to worry about your gear at all. Just use whatever you get, just auto-equip it. Around Chapter 4, you can farm a few heroic pieces, like the important stuff. For your tank, you want a good chest plate. For your DPS, you want a good weapon if they don't have a unique weapon, and maybe a good pair of earrings. For the rest of your team, probably just a good weapon. If they're a frontliner, a good chest plate and a good sub armor. And then once you get Chapter 5, Chapter 6 is when you can start focusing on actually kitting out your entire team with heroic and ancient gear. And once your team's about 71, that's when you really want to start looking for guildies or in the main channels, people saying looking for men BD70, stuff like that, to carry you and get you some beginning legendary gear. You can use that legendary gear to kind of catapult your team into farming for your own legendary gear. For example, all my Red Dragon gear was farmed by myself and my fiance. No guildies have helped us with Red Dragon. Black Dragon gear, that was all help from guildies. We can't farm that on our own yet, so thank you, guildies. And really just start looking for good substats. 2 good substats is fine when you're starting out. Eventually start looking for 3 good substats, or even better 4, and try reforging. I would just reforge once. If it's got 2 perfect and 1 imperfect, like this orb, honestly you should only reforge once, twice if you have enough rubies. Never reforge 3 times unless you've got the money for it, like in real life, to buy more rubies. And reforge tickets save for after you have already used up 2 or even 3 chances at summoning, because reforge tickets are incredibly rare. They don't get given out often. They're given out mainly for events, and they're difficult to get. Like, I've never used reforge tickets since I started the game. Been through 2 events that have given them out, and I've only got 19. So that's pretty much 2 months, I want to say. Let's look at the calendar. Nope, not the calendar. Let's look at the 28-day login. Yeah, so I'm coming up on my 2nd month, actually, of King's Trade. Woohoo. Anyways, guys, so that's the gear guide. Substats for DPS, attack speed, crit damage. For others, for tanks, max HP, magic defense, physical block. For runes, I guess I should cover runes. For runes, for most unique weapons, double attack and a mana recovery is perfectly good for pretty much everyone. Some of them want triple attack, some of them want double attack and a lifesteal, but for the most part you can't go wrong with triple attack or double attack and a mana recovery. Unless you're a tank, in which case you generally want the toughness ones, so physical or magical toughness. For your armor, for a DPS, you generally want crit damage or accuracy. For a tank, you want mostly crit damage for DPS. For tank, you want stuff like physical defense. And for your sub gear, for a DPS, you want crit. For a tank, you want stuff such as mana recovery per damage, which is, so 50% means that if you take, I want to say 50% of your health in total damage, you will gain 1 mana, which is pretty good for tanks who are always taking damage. So that's runes. And apart from that, yeah, it's just kind of slowly upgrading your gear, getting to tier 7 legendary gear, awakening that tier 7 legendary gear so that it gets better and better, getting the right options on it, getting the good, especially the ancient runes on it. Like, I've actually got an ancient attack rune now, so I'm going to give that to my Marianne pretty soon. And really just focusing on the right subsets. Some units do want niche gear sets. Sonya is one of the best examples of this. I don't have her gear set on her right now, but for the Sonya actually focuses on attack speed. And that's because her Transcendence perk, especially her tier 5 one, has a 15% chance to deal extra magic damage, 10% of her maximum hit points, and apply a second stack of her passive. Then her passive also synergizes with attack speed. So her passive is Shock. Every attack injects electricity, so increases magic damage taken by 1%. And at 30 stacks, there's a special effect, a lot of damage, and they take more damage, as well as extra stun. Her unique weapon, if you have it, also synergizes with attack speed. So if I go to the arena here. And Sonya is actually pretty interesting because there's actually a build for Sonya where she doesn't use her unique weapon because it lets her have more attack speed from substats, as the runes that you can get for weapons are limited and do not include attack speed. But Sonya can get attack speed and maximum hit points, as well as crit and crit damage as runes for her weapon. She can only, or as subsets for her weapon, sorry. And her unique weapon is Eye of the Storm, Yanatus, which increases shock duration by 2 seconds, so that's her passive, increases the amount of time your team has to do extra magic damage. When auto-attacking an enemy inflicted by shock, all cooldowns are reduced by 1.6%. So Sonya is really a champion that exemplifies synergy with attack speed. Her unique weapon synergizes heavily with attack speed because of the cooldown reduction while attacking enemies inflicted with her passive. She inflicts her enemies with the passive faster with more attack speed. She gets more mana to cast more skills, which the cooldowns are reduced, so she can cast them as they come off cooldown from having higher attack speed. And her T5 perk makes attack speed much more worth it, as attack speed lets her do more damage. Max HP, she wants it as a tank, and she wants it for the T5 perk to allow her to do tons of damage. So there are a few heroes like that, but for the most part, you cannot really go wrong with the cookie cutter builds. Sonya will do just fine if you give her a unique weapon with normal rune setup for a tank, so physical toughness, magical toughness, a mana recovery, and physical defense, magical defense, max HP, and physical block as the substats. It's just that she is a good example of a unit that will also scale better with a specific armor set. But you don't really need to worry about farming specific armor sets until you're so late game that you're farming for perfect gear for everyone, as well as niche gear for stuff such as PvP gear sets or dodge sets and stuff like that. Anyways, guys, I hope this video was informative and taught you about gear and substats in King's Raid. Gear is certainly an expensive thing. It's what you'll probably end up spending most of your money on later in the game, just because Awakening alone costs millions and millions of gold. But it's worth it because the amount of stats you gain from gear is huge and will allow you to do much more content. If you're ever feeling depressed because you feel your team isn't doing as much damage as those teams you see in World Boss and Guild Raids doing billions of damage, even though you've got, for example, full T7 gear, it's probably just because your gear is only 0 or 1 star, you haven't doubled the base effect, you don't have the best substats, and your team just isn't transcended and fully leveled. Everything works together to multiply, and it's really a situation where the value of the set is much more than the sum of the parts. You will massively multiply your damage. The more perfect substats, the more stars you have in your gear, and the more levels and transcendence levels you have in your character. The multiplier is huge compared to what you think. You wouldn't think that getting an extra crit, extra 1 or 2 lines of crit or attack on your gear would make that much of a difference, but that can actually, based on how all these stats interact together, improve your damage by 2 or even 3 times, depending on how well optimized your gear and stats are. Anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you like it, and have a good one.